Rock, metal, prog, and everything in between. If you're into rock, you've come to the right place. Welcome to this episode of Talkin' Rock with Meltdown. Don't forget to follow the audio-only Talkin' Rock podcast on all podcast platforms. And now, it's time for today's conversation. Here's Meltdown.
Yo, good to see you. I've talked to you a few times on the phone, but I've never had a chance to actually talk to you like this. So good to see you.
Yeah, man. Look at the technology. I used to use a calling card to call WRIF.
That's right.
The label used to give you the calling cards from the hotel, and then inevitably they'd run out, in the middle of the interview and be like, this call is now costing you $150 an hour.
I never knew that. That's something I've never heard before. No kidding. I didn't realize that.
No, that was the thing. I mean, that was the thing about hotels back in the 90s was they made a lot of money on long distance calls.
That's right.
Yeah. And if you just started dialing, your bill would be in the hundreds of dollars, like almost immediately. Then they started charging for internet. Now everything's free, but now we got Zoom. We could do this virtually in person.
That's right. And you just mentioned, we're here in Detroit, and you're going to be here at the Fox Theater. Last time I talked to you, you talked about how much you really enjoy the Fox Theater. That's a really, truly, I've been here since 1995. I moved here, and that is truly a gem within this city.
It's a gem in the world. I mean, I play my fair share of really nice theaters, and I always say, and it's not just because I'm on the radio in Detroit, is the Fox Theater in Detroit is the nicest theater in the country. It's just the level of detail that was and the craftsmanship that was used to restore it to its original glory. I mean, it's overwhelming. It's like when you first walk into it, you're like, oh my God, what a beautiful place. And the other thing is, it's like, to me, it's right up there with the Albert Hall in London and the Vienna Opera House and, Carnegie Hall and stuff like that. And, it's great that it was saved from the wrecking ball because, I mean, the city of Detroit is, it benefits greatly from having a cultural site like that's preserved and active and hell, you can even see where Elvis played in the lobby. Elvis played the lobby,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you just mentioned all those great venues. Of course, Tales of Time was recorded at Red Rocks. That's a place is on my list, as with a lot of people. But talk about that album.
Well, I always say we've done Red Rocks like 12 times, and you can experience all four seasons in a single afternoon. And we did Tales of Time was recorded over 2 nights. The first night being we experienced all 4 seasons and a 2-hour rain delay. The second night was beautiful, 70 degrees and sunny. So that's most of where the footage came from because it rained hard and there was a thunderstorm. Now, I don't mind playing in the rain. There was a thunderstorm about 1.5 miles out and it just sat there, and they won't let you play unless the storm is 3 miles out. And I'm like, and the crowd was going like, come on, just play in the rain. Like, we would have been on 8 o'clock, but it's because it's a city run facility. And obviously you don't want anybody to get hurt. We're just going, come on, just move out a little bit further. And finally, at the very last minute where we were just about to call it, they okay, it's now 3 miles out. Now you can. So we did maybe 75 minutes before curfew and that was it. But the second night was really good. And that's predominantly where the thing came from. So.
Now, you already have another live recorded album in the can?
Hollywood Bowl. We just did Hollywood Bowl with the orchestra in August, and that'll be out next year, which is completely different. I mean, that's a playing with an orchestra and a rock band. It's Beethoven and Mozart did not anticipate electrified guitars. And I'm a guitar player, and my other guitar player, Josh Smith, we really felt like out of place because they pushed our guitar rigs like in another county. And I'm like, this is a guitar show, but we made the best of it. And it came out really, really good. I mean, really proud moment for me to play at Hollywood Bowl. I mean, I've been in Angelino for 22 years and I live close to the Hollywood Bowl and so that to me has been, a very, it was a big moment for me to actually cause the traffic on the 101 in Highland Boulevard, as opposed to not knowing there's a bowl show and then you get stuck in it for like 2 hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
All that was me on August 9th.
Now, there's a lot of bands that have famously recorded with symphonies and orchestras like Metallica and the Scorpions. Even Kid Rock did a show at the Fox Theater for charity with
Right.
the orchestra. So did you contact any of these other camps to talk about that?
Well, I asked Warren Haynes a couple days before what's it like, because he's done the Jerry Garcia orchestra shows, and because it's improvisational music, by and large, like what we do, and the orchestra is very structured, so you have to count bars. You have a 16 bar solo, not 17 or not 20. You got to kind of like make the marks. It goes back. Like Deep Purple did it at the Albert Hall in like 69. I got pictures, no audio yet, but I'm going down the rabbit hole. Albert King did it, I think, in Des Moines, Iowa, like in the 70s. And there he is with the flying V and the, behind a whole bunch of violins. So it's been done, and when it works, it's awesome, because it's like you're engulfed in this like this music, and it's with the band and the orchestra. I think we were like 55 pieces, and I it's in one case it was like really cool to just look around and go like, wow, this is just the coolest thing ever, and listen to the way it sounds. And then the business guy in me is looking around going, hell, I gotta pay everybody tonight.
Yeah, that's right. Do you feel like it breathes new life into some of your songs that you may have played for years and years?
Absolutely. It makes them completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different, because we had to choose versions of the songs to be orchestrated. It took years to get the book written. It's not just, they don't show up and just improv everything. It's like everything is written. And David Campbell, Trevor Rabin did some of the orchestrations. You know him from the band,
Yeah.
Yes. But most recently, like pretty much every Jeffrey Bruckheimer movie. And when he orchestrated some of the stuff, I'm like, wow, that sounds like a Jerry Bruckheimer gig. And Jeff Bova, and he did some of the orchestrations, and he actually toured with us before we did the orchestra show to make sure that we were sticking within the bars. And David Campbell wrote a lot of the charts and conducted it, and it was just a nice evening out at the Hollywood Bowl. And we opened for ourselves. The Bowl said, you got to have an opening act. We're like, well, we're cutting a DVD. And I said, I'll do it. So we went out there, played 45 minutes of sludgy blues rock. To most of the audience, thought we were the opening act. and then we go on. I'm like, no, it was just us. So
Yeah.
funny evening.
For the main event for sure. And Blues Deluxe Volume 2 is out. Pretty catchy title right there.
Yeah. Well, there was the reason why it's called Volume 2 is because when we did the first one 20 years ago, it was called Blues Deluxe. There was no guarantees there was going to be another album. That was the album that saved my career.
Yeah, that was a turning point, wasn't it?
Oh, for sure. And if it didn't work out, it was over. And I would have been washed up at 25. And so that's why it wasn't like I didn't have this forethought 20 years ago going, I'm just gonna I'm gonna name it Blues Deluxe Volume 1, because in 20 years when I'm successful, I'm gonna put out 2. No, it was like, and there was no bonus tracks. The hard drives that we recorded on 20 years ago didn't even work, so we couldn't even remix it. So we remastered it off the original master tape, and and then was like, okay, well, that's kind of a non-event. And so then what we did was we recorded a second group of songs and called it Blues Deluxe Volume 2, and I'm proud of it. It's out, it's out now, and it's doing really well. It's actually the album that's gotten the most attention in the last 4 or 5.
So you just said, obviously you made Blues Deluxe 20 years ago. Do you still have the fire? You still have the passion of a young Joe Bonamassa?
Yeah. That was part of the question I asked myself. Am I a better singer? Am I a better guitar player? Am I a better artist? And yeah, the only thing I don't have is the 2 chips on my shoulders. Before I was the most balanced guy in rock and roll. I had chips on both, but now it's like I'm a little bit more calm and more pragmatic about the approach. And yeah, the minute the fire and the fury goes away is the minute you got to hang it up, because then it's just step and repeat legacy stuff. And it's like, I'm not there yet. I'm not saying I won't get there, but we're not there yet. I still love what I do. I still love playing and singing and playing live, and getting to play these great old theaters that I've been blessed to have graduated into, I've graduated from opening up for BB King and Buddy Guy and Peter Frampton and Thorogood and all these cats, back in the day, to playing them and headlining them now myself. So, it's dreams do come true, kids. I will say that.
So you just mentioned a bunch of guys that you had played with throughout the years. Who's still on your list that you haven't played with?
Oh, there's a new crop of artists that have come out. They're so talented. But there's a list of collaborations that we're trying to get done in the next year. And I don't really have one that's like, oh, I got to do, I've been on stage with Clapton, been on stage with Jeff Beck, been on stage with like a lot of people. I was on stage with Ringo Starr a couple 5-6 weeks ago.
Wow.
And I'm like, my guitar position's right behind where he's standing. I'm like, and everybody's filming. I'm like, send me those videos. I'll send it to my parents.
Yeah, no doubt. You've had a chance to share the stage, of course, with legends, and I'm sure the 20-year-old Joe wouldn't have thought that.
No, I mean, when you meet your heroes and your heroes become your friends, it's a totally different vibe. I mean, it's like, I find that the most talented people I've met in this business are the nicest.
Mm-hmm.
And because they exude that quiet confidence. They know they're good. It's not an ego thing. They just know they have a special skill that makes them a star. And whether that's being an entertainer, being a songwriter, a guitarist, an instrumentalist, whatever. I mean, there's a special skill that's involved in getting out there in front of thousands of people and entertaining them for 2 hours.
Yeah. Mark Kendall from Great White told me just about the same exact thing, that the bigger the band, the nicer the people were. And yeah. So
and they're not interested in like, well, who, if anybody played over, or they're just gonna go play their hits and it's over. You know what I mean? It's like that's that quiet confidence.
Right. Well, I'm running out of time here, but in the story, I'll talk about your Keeping the Blues Alive Foundation, also the Journeyman LLC. I'll link to that as well. But you just mentioned Jeff Beck. Tell us a little something about Jeff Beck that maybe somebody may not have heard about before.
Well, I mean, the thing about Jeff was like, I'd done a bunch of shows with him in Europe, festivals. We did these bills with him, and his show was always amazing. To me, he was the greatest rock guitar player of all time, because for 6 decades, he would reinvent himself every decade and come up with something that I go, oh man, I wish I thought of that. He was just so creative and so influential. I mean, like when Gilmore says Beck is his favorite, like everybody, Beck's at the top of everybody's list. It's either Eddie or Jeff. And sadly, they're both gone. I mean, it's crazy, this world now. But I will say this about Jeff Beck: the most entertaining and the most incredible guitar player I've ever heard was when Jeff was just sitting in his dressing room. He had a little guitar amp and he had his guitar, and he was just playing to kill time before the show. And you just hear everything from Cliff Gallup to these insane phrases and melodies, and you're like, guy's not human. He's not human. And it would just be improv. And he would call me in every once in a while and be like, hey, check this thing out. And he'd hand me his guitar. I'm like, and it played high action and it was set up for him. And you just go, this guy he lives in rarefied air talent wise that not a lot of people will experience, in their life.
Well, that's great. Well, Joe, great to talk to you and see you in person. Like I said, the 18th of November at the Fox Theater. New records are out and everything. And good luck with everything. Safe travels. We'll see you here in the Motor City. We appreciate your time.
Looking forward to it, man. As always. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right.